Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison, and today I'm going to start the Character Think animation in the 51 Animation Challenges series today. Now, I'm really excited about this particular animation because not only did I try out a few experimental techniques to find out my preferred workflow for animation eventually, but also because, yet again, I'm still getting questions about how you color your animation with OpenToonz. So, now that the frame range brush is out, I think that I'll try out a newer technique that might be less technical and definitely won't have as many glitches as Behemoth's technique. Granted, I've never done Behemoth's coloring technique properly, but the frame range brush should be able to render the same results, and be able to render those results with less glitches, so also it'll have less steps in general. But as you can see with this super rough animation, I've been experimenting with the frame range brush for the eyebrows, trying to see if I can create some sort of guide. I'm still undecided if it's useful for this sort of workflow. It'd be nice to create the auto in-between and then select thumbnails on the level strip and then change the interpolation of the spacing after the fact. But it's fine how it is. We can accept how it is for right now. I'll just have to find out what it's good for. I'm still not sure if this is entirely a good or bad utilization of the frame range brush. I did a little more experimentation with it, but more on that later. I'm trying to experiment with the expressions and acting of the character, because although, by and large, I'm happy with the character blink animation, I felt as though the expressions were moving rather robotically. With the one eyebrow that I do have animated at the beginning of the animation, I'm totally not happy with it at all. It does the wave before it rests on the breakdown image where the character has one eyebrow up like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. By and large, I wanted to leave as much creativity for myself when it comes to the expressions of the character. So I pretty much left markers for the eyes, eyebrows, mouth, and nose. So I start out the same way that I've basically started to feel comfortable with. I start with creating the keys and the breakdowns with straight ahead animation. Now, I've requested that a few people that are a bit more experienced in animation take a look at this video and give me advice on this animation and where I should take it from here. I'm uncertain on if I have enough breakdowns. Maybe I should have a good number more of them, and I'm uncertain of if I have enough breakdowns. Maybe I should have a good number more of them than I currently have. Once I'm done just sketching out the rough sketch of the keys and breakdowns, I go ahead and make them look a bit more refined, because all of the in-betweens will be referencing to these keys and breakdowns. Now, I clearly put in a lot more effort than just a character thinking, but I wanted a series of anticipation actions leading towards the character having a thought, a moment of realization, and finally a moment of resolution. I think I need to add a pause after the character tilts his head, and also I think that I need to have him move a bit more at the resolution, because it feels like he just freezes in place just as he has his profound realization, which kind of kills the resolution to the thought and resolution. Now here I experiment with the frame range brush by trying to make the exterior of the head basically to move as a cohesive unit, hoping that it might be a bit more of a shortcut. But I think the problem that I faced was that I was being too minimalistic and that I didn't separate all of the parts in their proper place, which basically means I tried to do it with as few lines as humanly possible, and I don't necessarily think that that's the right approach. I still don't know if this workflow truly works or not. Ultimately, if you still need to go back and refine each and every frame after you use the frame range brush or the auto in-betweener from the level strip or something like that, you might as well just draw each and every single frame by hand anyways. So there came a point where I actually scrapped this idea, because I just had this realization that it just wasn't going to work out the way that I made it, and I just don't want to waste my time or yours. I'll take another stab at this at another time. I'm just letting you guys see this because I want to show you guys that I'm trying to find a practical use to some of the new tools, even though I may not know of a practical use for them at this current time. Now the animation skips ahead here a bit. I created a few spacing charts, which I'll have a tutorial for eventually, but although what I'm doing kind of works, I'm hoping one of the more experienced animators checking out this animation can tell me if I'm using them a little incorrectly or not. But ultimately the reason why the animation skipped ahead is because I forgot to turn on autosave, and then the developer's build that I'm using, the almost OpenTunes version 1.2, crashed, and so I lost a little bit of work there. So from this point forward, I have the autosave feature turned on at this point. Now in creating the in-betweens for this animation, I wound up actually zooming in a little bit into the timeline to make the interaction with the frames a little bit more manageable, and I juggle them around the timeline because in the
OpenTunes 1.2.0 is here
video, I turned on the feature that allows me to use the X sheet as an animation sheet. Also, I'm juggling them around because whatever frame on the timeline you're on, that same number will be assigned to the level strip. So not only can I continue drawing my animation sort of out of order, I guess, so that I can actually usually be drawing my lines in between the red and green lines at mostly all times, but it can also ensure that my level strip is nice, neat, and organized. This way, if I want to use this animation later on in a completely different project, I can do so without having to wonder if the level strip is even organized. Now, at the beginning of the process of drawing out these in-betweens, I'm drawing them out like I always have. But there comes a moment where, when I'm drawing with the onion skins turned on, it's at that moment that I resumed drawing out this animation after injuring my hand. I broke a carpal in my left hand, which is my drawing hand with a graphics tablet. I have the doctor's endorsement when it comes to drawing with this hand. All he says is make sure that I'm careful and let pain be my guide. Ultimately, the experience that I had in drawing dots with the onion skins was a much better experience than my prior methods of drawing my in-betweens. There's an official term for it, and I've mentioned it a few times. It's called point-to-point animation, but I haven't been able to find a practical use for it until now. Basically, after you have all of your dots laid out between the red and green lines, you're able to test your animation out by turning off your onion skins. Notice on the timeline how I always have 3 levels grouped together on the timeline. Basically, you draw a line, and then you flip back a frame, and then press forward twice to see the animation take place. It's really short, but you're able to see if there's any sort of line jitter, any sort of little glitches with your animation. If something looks off, you know exactly what is off. It's the line that you just drew between 2 dots. Maybe the dots need to be adjusted a little bit. It's the line you just drew, so it's so much easier to work with. This is a superior method to my prior animations because when you just draw everything out from the onion skins, you have 3 or 4 lines sometimes just jittering about, and since there's so many lines that just aren't working out, you know something is wrong, but you don't know what's wrong with it because there's just too much on the screen that just winds up jittering about. Something is wrong, but there's too much on the screen for you to identify what it is. And for me, if I don't really know what's wrong with my animation, I tend to stupidly think that I'll be able to fix it in the cleanup stage, which I don't think it ever really does. This point-to-point method also keeps solidity in your characters. Take my
anticipation head turn
animation as an example. I'm confident that the eyes, eyebrows, mouth, nose all retain solidity throughout the animation, but if you look at the top of his head throughout the entire animation,
In that particular animation,
it bobbles about like it's made out of rubber.
just boing.
Had I discovered this technique earlier for point-to-point animation, this wouldn't have happened. The way that I've seen other animators use point-to-point is they don't use the onion skins at all throughout most of the animation. They just keep flipping and flipping. But for me, I can't really visualize what I'm working on that way. At least, maybe it's because I'm new to animation, but I wind up flipping back and forth something like 15 times in order to make one point. I don't know if that's normal or if it's just me. I don't know what it is. And what I'm finding is that using the onion skins for the point-to-point animation work is that it's probably either just as effective or nearly as effective as it would be if you didn't have your onion skins turned on while you're making your points. I could be wrong in that statement, but that's just my findings for this particular animation from my perspective. I'm really liking how this rough animation is working out, even though I have yet to work out the rest of the face, the expressions, and all that. There's this point where the character tilts his head in thought, and I keep revisiting that part of the animation throughout the video. There's a lot of subtle movement in the head there, and there comes a point where I get tired of revisiting it, and rather than trying to animate it out of order like I would with the spacing chart and such like that, I just wound up deleting it all eventually and worked all the way through that little portion of the animation with straight ahead animation. Now normally I'd be further in this rough animation, but keep in mind that this is about 8 hours of work boiled down for you guys into a much shorter video, and it's about a 4-second animation so far. So this is one of the longer animations that I've done so far, possibly even the longest. Now, like I said, I'm thinking of giving you guys a proper tutorial on how to color your animations. One that's a little bit easier to follow, so I'm thinking of finishing this animation completely, and then at that point I'll go ahead and make the presentation video series. And then at that point I'll have the presentation for my collapsible windows bounty. And that's not only the reason why, but also because I'm actually currently supporting someone else's bounty at this point in time. I've currently donated $200 into it, but more on that in my next OpenToonz News video. Here, I was experimenting with straight-ahead animation that would lead into my keys and breakdowns when it comes to, like, the eyes, eyebrows, mouth, and nose. But that really didn't work out for me, so I tried playing with a frame range brush to see if I could get it to help me out in some way. You can see me make multiple attempts, but either it's not able to be used in this way, or I currently need to figure out a good way to get it to work. I thought it gave me a mildly decent result, but in the end, I'm actually planning on getting rid of everything that I did with just right here, with trying to animate the character's eyes, eyebrows, mouth, and nose. Again, I feel like I need to be allowed to experiment with the new goodies with 1.2.0 to find out what they're good at, what they're good for, and what they're not good for. Anyways, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you didn't enjoy it, please like, share, and subscribe anyways. There's a lot of effort that goes into this into this channel, a lot of time. Anyways, if you'd like to take a look at any of the other videos that I've created, feel free to take a look at the ones appearing on the screen right now, and you guys have a great day.